Over the years, the United States has consistently amazed the world with cutting-edge military technologies that seem straight out of science fiction. Now, the U.S. Navy is poised to blur the lines with the U.S. Air Force by transforming aircraft carriers into flying giants. Imagine these carriers soaring through the skies instead of sailing the seas, yet still projecting the formidable power of the U.S. Navy. While the idea of a flying aircraft carrier might sound like a futuristic concept, it's actually not new. This idea dates back to the World Wars, but recent technological advancements have reignited interest in it. The U.S. is once again pushing the boundaries with these revolutionary flying carriers. The renewed focus on airborne carriers can be largely attributed to the unparalleled dominance of American sea-based aircraft carriers today. Astonishingly, the U.S. owns 25% of the world's aircraft carriers, and their combined deck space surpasses that of all other nations together. In addition, the members of the lead USS Ford class of aircraft carriers are far more lethal than any other aircraft carrier in history. The following features prove this. First, nuclear power. The USS Gerald Ford is powered by two Bechtel A-1B nuclear reactors, the most cutting-edge engines created for use on water. As a result, the carrier would only need to be refueled once over its entire 50-year operational life. These engines make use of the enduring nature of nuclear energy, allowing the USS Ford to run for 25 years at a time without refueling. With a peak speed of around 30 knots, this supercarrier can access every country on the planet, ready to pay friendly visits to allies and wreak havoc on enemies. Secondly, the USS Ford features the latest sensors, processors, and weapons needed on an aircraft carrier to maintain a balance of intelligence and lethality. Unlike virtually every other aircraft carrier in the world, the USS Ford has a single system for both horizon and volume search in the form of the AN/SPY-3 multifunction radar. This X and S-band active electronically scanned array remains the most advanced radar system from the U.S., with enough versatility to handle surveillance, air traffic control, missile communications, and spotting targets from miles away. And lastly, the American fighter jets and UAVs are a marvel. Up to 75 fighter jets and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, can call the USS Ford home at any given time, including the Navy's prized fifth-generation F-35C Lightning II Joint Strike Fighter. The development program for this fighter remains the Pentagon's most expensive weapons project to date, with a reported cost of $400 billion. The result of such an investment is a fighter that can truly do it all: close air support, vertical takeoff and landing, and everything in between. This cements it as the modern go-to fighter for the Navy and every other military branch, at least until the sixth-generation F/A-XX fighter takes center stage. When that happens, the USS Ford is already equipped with the necessary technologies to host, launch, and recover it. All of these features and many more combine to make the U.S. unbeatable on the seas. An airborne version of these carriers could make the U.S. invincible in the skies, which remains an ultimate goal. Many programs have been created to achieve this objective. Although real flying carrier concepts may not be as dramatic as Marvel's fictional helicarrier from S.H.I.E.L.D., they are the closest we've come in the last 100 years. Going that far back in time, we must acknowledge the airships as early as 1917. Experiments were made with aircraft slung under airships, which we'll call microfighters. These hanging aircraft were primarily there to defend the airships, but as airships fell out of favor, various flying carrier programs emerged, each unique in its own right. In the 1970s, the U.S. Air Force experimented with converting one of its large aircraft into a flying aircraft carrier equipped with parasite fighters that could be deployed and recovered mid-air. Among the contenders for this role were the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy and the Boeing 747. Boeing took the lead by correctly pointing out in their proposal that the 747 offered superior range and endurance when flying with a full payload of an impressive 883,000 pounds. The 747 could carry up to 10 microfighters at a time. Boeing specially designed and built the microfighters to be small enough to be housed within the 747. They also developed an apparatus that would allow the large plane to carry the fighters over long distances, deploy them where needed, recover them, and refuel them if necessary. However, uncertainties arose regarding the fuel range and how well the Boeing microfighters would fare against advanced threats. Ultimately, the proposal never made it off the pages of Boeing's report. However, the report did establish that, despite the challenges and likely high costs, the concept was technically feasible. True to their nature of pushing the limits, Lockheed proposed a flying aircraft carrier the size of a traditional aircraft carrier. This colossal aircraft would weigh a groundbreaking 5,265 tons and stand as tall as a 14-story building. To get such a massive structure to fly, the design included a 1,120-foot wingspan and a 560-foot-long fuselage, equivalent to the length of 2.5 Boeing 747s end-to-end. Surprisingly, the Lockheed CL-1201 could be powered by only 4 huge turbofan engines, using regular jet fuel to reach an altitude below 16,000 feet. At this point, a nuclear reactor would take over, powering the jet for 41 days straight without refueling or landing. The aircraft could maintain a Mach 0.8 cruising speed at around 30,000 feet. This massive aircraft would have a crew of 845, the capability to deploy 22 multi-role fighters, and a hangar bay for repairs. However, it would likely cost billions of dollars and require extensive labor to produce and maintain, contributing to why the aircraft never advanced past the proposal stage. Nevertheless, its concept remains a historical anomaly that continues to inspire renewed interest. The B-36 Peacemaker strategic bomber was another aircraft intended to be upgraded to carry microfighters. To launch its microfighters, it would use the McDonnell F-85 Goblin and could house up to 4 of them. The B-36 was the ideal pick in the 1950s due to its massive size and weight. With a wingspan of 230 feet, it dwarfed even the B-52 Stratofortress and cemented itself as one of the largest aircraft to ever take to the skies. Fully loaded with fuel and up to 86,000 pounds of weapons, it weighed an astonishing 410,000 pounds. Despite these impressive specifications, the B-36 never flew in operational missions. While it was initially intended to provide the U.S. with the capability of efficiently bombing Berlin, World War II had ended by the time it was ready. However, its immense size and range prompted the Air Force to consider its use as a flying aircraft carrier. This idea, too, failed to come to fruition as the advent of mid-air refueling dramatically increased the operational range of all types of aircraft, ultimately undermining the importance of the B-36 Peacemaker's range. Away from the attempts of the 1900s, the U.S. has relatively recently been looking into a new flying carrier program. Since 2015, the United States Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, has been investigating the prospect of using a modified Lockheed C-130 Hercules cargo aircraft to deploy and support Dynetics X-61 Gremlin's unmanned aerial vehicles as microfighters. After completing their missions, these microfighters are recovered using a proprietary air recovery method involving a drogue-like receptacle and docking technique. Testing for this program is currently being conducted at Dugway. In January 2022, during tests conducted at the Dugway Proving Grounds with International Air Response providing the contracted C-130A, DARPA successfully launched an X-61 Gremlin UAV from the bay of the C-130. If this test receives the green light and the aircraft carrier is officially launched, it would enable the U.S. to deploy drones from motherships while remaining outside of enemy air defenses. This would allow the drones to engage targets before returning to the airspace around the mothership to be recaptured and carried home for service or repairs. However, the tests encountered some challenges. Despite one test showing that the drone could indeed be deployed by the C-130, the drone itself was ultimately destroyed after an hour and a half of flight due to a parachute failure. However, this setback is likely an easy fix that would be prevented in subsequent tests. With that issue addressed, the program would continue as planned, facilitating the rise of other similar programs and ultimately providing the U.S. with the power of a supercarrier in the sky to complement its already powerful fleet of aircraft carriers. According to experts, this fleet of aircraft carriers and flying carriers would become even more potent. But until then, we will leave it to the research guys to speculate. Thank you for watching. That's all for this video. Make sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up if you like the content.